Hey everyone, welcome back to their hardware news recap for the week. In this one, crypto and NVIDIA no longer friends. They've ended their friendship. It's a bitter split. We're gonna be talking about that, I guess. Also, there's an RDNA update for a quote that AMD made through translation a couple weeks ago. We'll be going over E3 being dead, good riddance. They're canceling this year with no current plans announced for next year. 144 core Intel CPU and plenty more. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermaltake and their new Series 500TG ARGB mid-tower case. The Thermaltake Series case is perforated all on the front panel and the power supply shroud, including perforations on the cable side of the case for further ventilation to the PSU and hard drive chamber of the case. A separate access door for hard drives makes the case easy to work with for 3.5-inch storage, or the door can be swapped out for a separate LCD panel kit that displays system information. Other features include a GPU support kit, vertical mounting, and a hinged glass panel. Learn more at the link in the description below. So first news story, NVIDIA has decided that its new best friend is generative AI, and it's moving on from crypto, or maybe it would lead you to believe that it never liked crypto at all to begin with. Do you not like that now? We don't like that either. What do you like? Because that's what we like. We don't like the thing that you don't like. Is crypto the thing you do? Anyway, that's where they are right now. So the posture the company is presenting at the moment in an interview with The Guardian is that crypto is not only not its friend, but useless. And they claimed that it adds nothing to society, stating the following, quote, "All this crypto stuff, it needed parallel processing, and NVIDIA is the best. So people just programmed it to use for this purpose. They bought a lot of stuff, and then eventually it collapsed because it doesn't bring anything useful for society. AI does." And that's from NVIDIA CTO Michael Kagan. Pretty bold words coming from a company that made money hand over fist, first during the 2021 shortage and crypto boom, and previously in the 2017 crypto boom. And actually, if anyone remembers, NVIDIA got fined $5.5 million, pennies, by the SEC for failing to report its crypto mining revenue properly and disclosing those sales during fiscal year 2018. So NVIDIA so strongly believes that crypto adds nothing useful that it made a fortune off of it and then buried the sales that were related to crypto. You can't much more directly say we really care about this than fraudulently filing your income in such a way that the SEC fines you. That's about as much we care about this as you can get. Maybe it was accidental though. Maybe it wasn't an intentional and fraudulent filing, but rather just a big oopsie. That's not illegal, it's just kind of stupid. So NVIDIA, you can pick your options there, I guess. Now, whether or not you agree with the statement that NVIDIA CTO made here, the thing that actually matters is just sort of the fact that it's pure posturing and it's contradictory with the company's actions. That's the part we care about. But there's more. So other than just chasing whatever flavor of the month is that makes NVIDIA money, Kagan also said this, quote, "I never believed that crypto is something that'll do good for humanity." I was going to jump in with some kind of reference, but I actually have nothing to say about that particular quote. So let's continue. He then said, "You know, people do crazy things. They buy your stuff. You sell them stuff, but you don't redirect the company to support whatever it is." Very much the attitude of, it's not our fault. He wanted protection, and we told him, give us money, and we'll give you protection, or we'll break your kneecaps. This is definitely we're just the guy selling the things. Like when the cop arrests the drug dealer, and the drug dealer says, "I thought he had a medical card." Do we need more analogies? This is like one of the worst possible defenses. But when Kagan here said, you don't redirect the company to support whatever the thing is, that's sort of an interesting statement. Because actually, NVIDIA previously launched a line of tailor-made mining GPUs called CMP. We don't know how successful the CMP cards really were, but it goes to show that NVIDIA did, in fact, alter its business plans to suit crypto mining in at least some capacity. All of this comes across particularly tone-deaf when you consider NVIDIA's 2018 technical press event, where one of the lead architects got on stage and presented to a room filled with media and NVIDIA employees and partners, making jokes about how great the hash rate on Turing was before the launch of the card, and then there was some banter between a couple of NVIDIA employees, including the architect, about how, don't worry, crypto will come back. And when I say joking, I mean in the sense that at least some of these individuals really liked it. I'm sure it's great to do mining on brand new cards that no one else in the world has access to. And the reason to bring that up specifically is because if NVIDIA's defense to the CTO saying, I never believed that it would bring anything useful to society, is that's not the company's statement. That's this individual's statement, not necessarily as an employee. You have the opposite here, where there's an individual statement at NVIDIA presented to the press saying how much they liked crypto. So anyway, they're not friends anymore. And here's NVIDIA's new friend, AI. The story was just absurd. That's the only reason it's in here. It's not like it's actionable, but yeah, just own it. Just be like, yeah, we liked crypto because it made us a lot of money, and it doesn't make us money now, so we're focusing on other things. That's fine. At least it's honest. Up next, irrelevant gaming show E3 is finally dead, at least for this year. We had some run-ins with E3 many years ago. They weren't particularly fond memories, but the ESA, which organizes the event, said the following, quote, "This was a difficult decision because of all the effort we and our partners put toward making this event happen. But we had to do what's right for the industry and what's right for E3. We appreciate and understand that interested companies wouldn't have playable demos ready and that resourcing challenges made being at E3 this summer an obstacle they couldn't overcome." Yes, resourcing challenges. Like, we're doing our own event. We don't want to go to E3 and pay tons of money for something we can do on our own. Thank you very much. The ESA continued. It said, "For those who did commit to E3 2023, we're sorry we can't put on the showcase you deserve and that you've come to expect from ReedPop's event experiences." Now, E3's numbers have dwindled for years, and a lot of this is because the event never adapted to a new market. E3 has always held on to this sort of aura of being an exclusive event where it's just developers and the most elite gaming media. We weren't included in that list years ago when we applied. But they have lost market share to events like PAX, PAX East, PAX West, now it's called, where they represent actual gamer attendees, so consumers, whether that's tabletop or video game. PAX is an awesome event, by the way, if you haven't been, and not just developers and media, although there's still representation for developers and media. You aren't treated in a particularly special way there as media other than 1 hour of early access to the floor on one day of the event, which we've always really liked because it feels more real that way. So E3 decided to keep its doors kind of closed for the most part, and that certainly hurt its performance. The developers and publishers all branched out and started doing their own events. If you're not familiar with these trade shows, a lot of times companies will skirt the rules to try and avoid paying booth fees that can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, or at one of the major shows we go to, not sure we can give the specific company name here, but there is a company that pays $2 million to be there and construct their booth in a large way. So obviously a big expense when potentially they could just host it on their own. So E3 keeping its doors shut to not only filthy commoners, but also unworthy developers, like smaller indie devs who can get much further at PAX, and unworthy media, that kind of explains why they're going away. It's not just because people have moved to online production of their events, because indie devs certainly can still massively benefit from shows, and so can consumers. They're a lot of fun. But it is because of mismanagement. Back in 2014, we were on the receiving end of some of the unworthy treatment where we got into an argument with E3 over website traffic. We were mostly a website at that point. We're doing about 150,000 page views a month, and they would offer one badge per 10,000 visitors. We applied for a couple, I think 3 of them, and they, well, here's the one quote from my email that's worth sharing. I said in reply to them, this was 2014. "I'm not sure where you're getting your metrics." I told them we have 150,000 page views, 100,000 unique monthly visitors, and to insinuate 10,000 monthly is a gross insult and an example of obsolete traffic measurement methodology. So some things haven't changed. I had much less tact then, although tact is kind of questionable even today, but that's kind of why people like our videos. And to be fair, it was kind of an asshole way to say, no, you're wrong. But basically, they were using some measurement methodologies that actually were flawed because we provided third-party verified reports, and they decided we weren't worthy of more than one badge. Here you go, kid. Have fun at the show. So anyway, that was our experience with the E3. Oh, and for some context here, we were mostly a gaming site back then. Hardware was only just starting to ramp for us in 2012, 2014 area. So it was still gaming focused. But it's gone this year. So we won't be covering anything from it because it's not there, although we normally don't anyway. Okay, next one. In brief RDNA news, a few weeks ago, it's when I was traveling, there was a news story that made the rounds about AMD's Rick Bergman stating something about their GPU manufacturing plans and their design. I'll just read it to you. This was the translated quote. It said, technically, it is possible to develop a GPU with specs that compete with theirs, NVIDIA. However, the GPU developed in this way was introduced to the market as a graphics card with a TDP of 600 watts and a reference price of $1,600. And it was accepted by general PC gaming fans. After thinking about it, we chose not to adopt such a strategy. Now, that part is old news at this point, but there's an update here. So when we saw this, we thought it was odd that an AMD employee would accuse NVIDIA's card of being 600 watts when in fact it's much lower. It's closer to 400 to 450 watts. And it would be incredibly misleading to basically say we could have done that too, but their power was too high, it was 600 watts. So that was through translation. That was published on Japanese media. They translated it from English to, I guess, Japanese. And then when it spit back out in machine translation, which is what was propagated on the internet, what I just read is what comes out. So we contacted AMD and we asked them for the actual original pre-translation statement, and AMD sent this, quote, "We're planning our next couple generations of products, and we had to ask ourselves how high we can go. So obviously our competitor went to $1,600 and 400 plus watts. So we could, graphics is scalable, we could build a $2,500 solution and be the highest performance at 600 watts or some other. At some junction, you have to just say, we're going to draw the line on what we're targeting. So for this generation, we said $999. And separately, AMD noted to Gamers Nexus when we asked for clarification, quote, "At no point did Rick claim NVIDIA's solution is 600 watts or more." And at this point, the other outlet should have probably corrected its translation because AMD reached out to them after we reached out to AMD. But of course, this still sort of comes across as a, we could have won the race if we had a better car, but you didn't though, so it doesn't matter. But this is a much different tone than when in the original mistranslated quote, it presented AMD as misleading people into believing NVIDIA's GPU is much higher power consumption than it actually is. It can do 600 watts, but you have to overclock. It's not really the same thing. So anyway, you could always arms race to a higher power and cost, but AMD didn't, so it doesn't really matter. Now, to be fair, the 7900 XT shouldn't have been a $900 card to begin with, but the tone overall is softened here, and it's fine to be critical of company quotes, obviously, see the previous news story, but we wanted to check with AMD to make sure people were at least being critical of something they actually said and not something that was a mistranslation of what they said, which is just an accident, so that's fine. Anyway, it still has the same overall tone, which is, but we didn't want to compete, so we didn't. Next one, 144-core Intel CPU. So Intel just held an investor webinar event where it presented some new products, mostly for data center and enterprise, and for artificial intelligence. It calls this in aggregate the DCAI business, or data center artificial intelligence, and that roadmap include a 144-core CPU with Intel's Xeon Scalable architecture, Sapphire Rapids, already at 48 cores, and the 5th gen of these, Emerald Rapids, scheduled to arrive in Q4 of 2023. These CPUs operate on the same platform as 4th gen. They're primarily focused on increasing performance per watt in the same socket, and that's not 4th gen like desktop, but this 4th gen. After that comes Sierra Forest in the first half of 2024, according to Intel, which is a CPU made up entirely of Intel's efficiency cores, up to 144 of them, all on one package. This will be the first production CPU on the Intel 3 process node that succeeds the current Intel 7. This new platform will use the LGA 7529 socket, pictured by Spray on Copper on Twitter. where it dwarfs an already large Sapphire Rapid CPU. Just to help put the colossal nature of LGA 7529 into perspective, this is what it looks like with a 13th gen desktop CPU superimposed on top, posted by Harukaze 5719. So LGA 7529 means 7,529 pins. It's an insane socket. It's a lot of pin density. And following all of this will be Granite Rapids, and that one is performance core based in the design using the new larger socket. Intel didn't have anything to share regarding the specs of this particular future CPU aside from its existence and also being on Intel 3 and being planned for 2024 launch. There were some additional details on FPGA products, but those are outside of our wheelhouse. The craziest thing to us is the 144 E-core CPU. Assuming those will be available in multi-socket servers, that's a crazy level of parallelization, and the industry hasn't yet really seen it in x86. There are high core count CPUs, but this is something different. Up next, modular laptop maker Framework has a new model it's announced, the Framework 16. This notebook is a 16-inch notebook. It's larger than the existing 13-inch model they offer, and the main focus for this design, other than keeping the modularity, was adding a dedicated GPU to the laptop with the intent of keeping the repairability and upgradability that Framework has largely marketed itself on. There are several new features as compared to the 13, and the biggest is the expansion bay. It's an area on the bottom rear of the laptop that offers a PCIe x 8 interface and a cutout area in which a large module can sit. The headline use case is for a discrete GPU module that increases both the thickness and the depth of the laptop. The GPU module itself has the GPU package centrally located with 2 heat pipes that run to slim fin stacks along the rear of the module. 2 radial fans push air through the fins to disperse the heat, and the video makes it look easy to slide this module into the laptop in place of the stock blank. It looks like there might be a USB-C port in the middle rear of the GPU as well. We actually have a Framework 13 laptop, just recently used it on one of the trips. It had really good battery life and much more portable on a plane than some of the other stuff I've used. But obviously this one paves the way for future GPU upgrades in each generation, and it's a feature that few laptops have ever successfully pulled off. Some of them have done it. I think they were called MXM modules was the era where it was attempted. Dell's Alienware Area 51M, as an example, tried to do this, but they only ever offered those upgrades for a limited time. Framework also showed off a concept for running one of the GPU kits in an external enclosure, allowing you to continue using the GPU standalone on any system with Thunderbolt 4 or USB 4. This is in line with the company's push to keep its parts useful even beyond their service life, like with the Cooler Master case for the Framework 13 motherboard to use as a standalone PC. The other major change versus the 13 is the ability to set up the keyboard area either with or without a numpad. This is due to new input modules on the top side of the laptop, which come in 3 sizes. The large module is the keyboard itself, the medium is for the numpad, and the small is for things like the LED matrix as shown in Framework's images. Just like the other modules, these are open source, allowing for third parties to make other input devices. So for example, sliders, phone chargers, or specialized touchpads for DJs in one of their examples. Now for us, we're actually the users of large laptops normally because it's what our editors need when we're traveling. It's the most efficient way to get a lot of editing done without a thermally constrained body and with all the horsepower that we need to get things done effectively. But one of the other reasons is for the writing team here, we use home and page up, page down. You can combine control and alt with them in various ways to really rapidly navigate Word documents. It's not something that I think most people consider. And when those keys are lacking from a keyboard, it's a massive impact, at least to my flow when I'm writing or editing a script. So we often look for laptops that are at least 15 plus to accommodate those keys. Now, Framework is publishing the spec of the expansion bay, so anyone can design and manufacture other modules that would benefit from a PCIe x 8 connection. And this could include M.2 SSD enclosures, maybe like a capture card or something like that, or anything else that sits on the X8 interface or PCIe interface, and the same goes for the input modules as well. This is currently a concept, so we'll have to see how it is once it's shipping. And just to make something really clear here so there's no confusion, so as probably most of you know, Linus is invested in Framework, And just to make it really clear, we have no such investments. We don't have even investments, like I don't have any investments in the retail stock market in PC hardware or PC hardware adjacent tech companies, because that would be a conflict for our reviews process. So we have no involvement in Framework. We just think that this is actually pretty cool, and maybe we'll review it or something like that. We may consider buying it and independently looking at one of the 16s, because it might be an option for us for our editing when we're traveling. Up next, Japan and the UK approved the Microsoft acquisition of Activision-Blizzard. It's a $69 billion buyout. The Japan Fair Trade Commission has finished its review of the situation, and it stated, quote, "This transaction is unlikely to result in substantially restraining competition in any particular fields of trade." Similarly, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority said this: "The CMA Inquiry Group has updated its provisional findings and reached the provisional conclusion that overall the transaction will not result in substantial lessening of competition in relation to console gaming in the UK." The core of the CMA's original concern was actually around Call of Duty. And it's kind of bizarre to read these official government documents referencing Call of Duty and abbreviating it as COD. So gaming has definitely gotten mainstream at this point. They said, quote, "New data, which provides better insight to the actual purchasing behavior of COD gamers, indicates that this strategy would be significantly loss-making under any plausible scenario." They go on to say they don't think that Microsoft would therefore make Call of Duty exclusive. The UK's final verdict will be on April 26th, but at this point, that's a favorable conclusion from both authorities for Microsoft in purchasing Activision-Blizzard. And it looks like they are largely basing it on the assumption that some of these bigger titles like Call of Duty will be kept non-exclusive, at least for now. So we'll follow up on this once there's a firm decision, but it needs a couple of final major dominoes to fall before Microsoft can move forward. A quick one up next. So Steam is ending Windows 7, 8, and 8.1 support. If you use any of those three operating systems, maybe on a secondary computer or primary, you will need to upgrade your OS in order to continue using Steam. Valve says that as of January 1st, 2024, the only way to continue operating the Steam user interface will be with Windows 10 or Windows 11. The source of the change stems from the fact that the Steam client relies on an embedded version of Google Chrome's browser that will no longer function on older versions of Windows. And beyond that, the future versions of Steam will require security features that are only present on Windows 10 and Windows 11. Valve also warns users that Microsoft has already ended the Windows 7 security updates as of 2020, and 8.1 ended in January of 2023. Only major one-off updates will come after that, nothing regular anymore. So even though we look fondly back on Windows 7, and a lot of the factories we visit are still using Windows 3.1 for their CNCs and things like that, it is becoming an attack vector if you are connected to the internet. The reason the factories get away with it is because they're not. It's just a one-off. It's a specific machine for a specific purpose. So Steam will stop working for you. And finally, in this week's news, Gordon Moore, Intel co-founder and man after whom Moore's Law is named, passed away on March 24th at the age of 94. We wanted to provide some history of what Moore provided the industry and where he came from within the industry, because the contributions are noteworthy and massive and are worthy of going over here. So Moore started Intel along with Robert Noyce in July of 1968, and he served as the executive vice president until 1975. He then stepped up to the role of president, and originally, if you didn't know, Intel was supposed to be called Moore-Noyce, but the duo decided it sounded too much like more noise, and because they were of the engineering type, electrical engineering type, noise to them meant electrical noise, like signal integrity. More noise, bad. So they went with Intel. Later in 1979, Moore was appointed as chairman of the board and CEO, giving up the latter role in '87. Moore continued at Intel as chairman emeritus until 2006, when he stepped down, totaling 38 years of leadership at Intel. Moore got his start in the industry at Shockley Semiconductor, where he worked under William Shockley, co-inventor of the transistor, which we take for granted these days when we talk about how there are literal billions of them in chips. After a year and a half there, Moore and several others were unhappy with Shockley's leadership and left to form Fairchild Semiconductor in 1957. Shockley actually named them the Traitorous Eight for this move. In 1959, Moore was made director of R&D at Fairchild. He stayed at Fairchild until 1968, when he and Noyce left to found Intel. Their first product was the 3101 Static Random Access Memory, or SRAM. We still use versions of SRAM today. The 64-bit 3101 achieved twice the speed of competing memory at the time, even though it used the same fundamental technologies. After that, the 1101 followed, based on their research into silicon gate metal oxide semiconductor memory, and it was the first commercial use of silicon logic gates. As for Moore's Law, you've definitely heard the name before, it's the assertion that the number of transistors per silicon chip doubles every year, which was later revised to every 2 years in 1975. In addition to his technical and business achievements, Moore is responsible for founding the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation along with his wife. Through its life, the foundation has donated over $5.1 billion to various charities since 2000. And if you live near or get the chance to visit Northern California, we have a couple of really strong recommendations here for you that are related to this. The first one is the Computer History Museum. It is awesome. I love visiting there. I've been multiple times. We filmed videos a couple times. If you search the channel for Computer History Museum, you'll find some very old videos, but are still really cool for a walkthrough. And it is an amazing resource in Mountain View, California. They have systems all the way back to the 1800s, including the Babbage engine, which was made out of wood and is a replica of an actual design from the era of the first, effectively, computer, at least if you don't count things like an abacus. So the second recommendation is Intel's museum. It's not as impressive as the Computer History Museum since it's more focused on just Intel, but they do have a museum on the first floor of one of their buildings in San Jose, Mountain View area. The public can visit. I'm not sure if you need to request access in advance or not these days, so check online. But it has several of Moore's original inventions on display, including the physical hardware. So really cool and educational if you're into this kind of stuff. That's it for news this week. Thanks for watching as always. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly by grabbing one of our mod mats, shirts, or other items, or patreon.com/gamersnexus. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. We'll see you all next time.